Доброго дня. Доброго дня усім.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Good afternoon, participants. Good afternoon, our guests. I welcome you to the rounds table devoted to the annual transparency of the universities. From the very beginning, I will present all our participants. I'm happy to welcome Ms. Lilia Grinevich, Minister of Education, Mr. Sharov from the Ministry of Education Department. I'm happy to welcome Mr. Andriy Meleshevych, President of the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, Mr. Volodymyr Bugrov, Vice Rector of the Shevchenko Kyiv National University. I'm happy to welcome Mr. Mykhailo Vynnytskyi, Advisor to the Minister of Education, Mr. Bahrushin, Advisor to the Ministry of Education, Mr. Georgiy, Kasianov, Director of the Institute for Education Development. Also, Mykyta Andreiev, member of the National Agency for Ensuring Higher Education Quality, and Ms. Ivanna Antonova, UTEMA Alliance for Transparent Management and Education. We have invited you, dear colleagues, to discuss three major issues. Whether the first issue is whether we have really open universities in Ukraine, whether there are real such universities or the growth points. The second issue, whether the competitiveness contributes to the openness of the university or creates incentives for universities to become more open. And the third issue, whether the openness of information in higher education will grow or not. First of all, about the purpose of our ranking. From the very beginning, we started from the assumption that applicants, parents, the university themselves, businesses lack information what's going on in the university. Later, we held the survey among students, and 56% of them stated that during entry campaign to the university they lacked a lot of information about the university and wished to have more information about the university. Why we do not review the websites? Because we clearly understand that the majority of students, more and more growing percentage of students review the websites when making decision which university to enter. Thus, websites become the strategic instruments for universities, and this year, when the budget, national budget money were allocated to the universities in line with the number of students, this competitiveness of universities became a strong factor for the universities. So I think that universities themselves now understand the importance of quality of their websites. The second aspect is that we intentionally did not publish our outputs when the survey was held in early July, because our major purpose was to advertise for some universities, but to assist universities to assist them in improving their websites. For example, we produced recommendations to the universities. Thus, in result of our survey, we pointed out to the weaknesses of the universities, we pointed out to the growth points inside universities, and disseminated these recommendations among the universities. On September 2nd, we published the ranking of universities, and we definitely know that more than 60 universities reviewed our recommendations, because we can trace back the visits of our websites, and some of them requested for deeper consultation, some of them met with the public relations department of our organization. So now I think that we should mention leaders. The first position is occupied by the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, the second is the Kyiv Polytechnical Institute, the third position, National University of Bioresources and Nature Use, then Prekarpattia National University, named after Stefanik, Umansky State Pedagogical University, Donetsk National University of Economy, National University, Lviv Polytechnic, Ternopil National Pedagogical University, Kyiv National University of Shevchenko, and the 10th is Uman National University of Gardening. But when we look at the figures, only 60 of the universities have crossed the threshold, the minimal quality threshold established for university. Now I would like to mention some universities which from 2015 understood the importance of websites. The Kyiv-Mohyla Academy occupied the first position in our rating because their website is very much saturated with information about training programs, about educational programs. The students can clearly understand what courses will be taught, etc. All the rest universities which you see on this chart and other 12 universities considerably improved the informational level at their websites. This is extremely important because the quality of process, of training process, depends very much on the openness and on the amount of information. For example, the accreditation level. When experts try to get access to information about courses delivered by the university, by each program of the university, they need this open information to make clear judgment. As far as I know, Miss Lila has to attend another event. That's why I would like to give the floor to the minister and to provide her opinion. I'm very much grateful for this survey because we in general have problems with the ranking of universities, with measuring quality of delivered education. So we have to develop such methodology, have to to select the best practices of assessments. Sooner or later, the ministry will start produce rankings of the quality of education in universities, and maybe the national agency which will be created soon will assess the quality of education delivered by universities and will license another quality agencies which would assess the quality of education in each area. I think that from this point of view, your review, the methodological approach of this review is very useful for us. I would like to remind all the present colleagues that transparency and especially financial accountability, this is a compulsory requirement included to the law on higher education. And when we discuss the law implementation and discuss how much and how intensively the law is implemented, by the way, implementation depends on the university. So when we speak about implementation, this should be clearly seen via openness and transparency. Thus, we are able to see how the universities implement the law education. And the third aspect, which I would like to raise today, this thing which negatively surprised me. The universities, we compared those universities to which we increased the order, which means that we increased the number of students paid from the budget against the rating. But we found out that those for whom state order was increased can occupy rather low positions in the transparency rating. And I believe that the results of this survey should become a subject of review and decision making and in the universities in order to make those universities more open. The university should not be a closed structure. It should be the center of community life, which should be open for this to this community. That's why for us and for me as a minister, it's important that this survey, which required a lot of effort and money, should not remain on the shelf, but should be used by the ministry and the universities, which is more important, to improve their work, their operations, and their communications with the society. When the ministry tries to assess the quality of universities, we also can use the outputs of this work. Dear colleagues, I invite anybody who wishes to speak. I would like to add, when we write down provisions about openness in the laws, we mentioned that this is for broad public, that this is for students, but we should mention that this is important for the universities, also not just to attract students, but also to find partners for cooperation. But with the openness, we have some problems. When I try to understand why one of the universities failed to get a sufficient number of students to physics department, I attended the website and understood that having got the information about equipment, about delivered courses, about the level of training, I won't be eager to enter that university to this specialty.
Можна їх вирішувати, і щоб ця інформація була.
I think that websites should be designed in a way that they provide proper information useful for the society. Yesterday, I spoke to one of your students about funding of higher education and who tries to develop some simulations, economic simulations, and he found out that he cannot find sufficient information neither in the state budget, nor in universities. So this shows that the degree of openness is insufficient everywhere.
Thank you. I will be brief. First, I would like to remind you that there was an attempt to introduce some level of transparency when there was a project on university autonomy supported by the Renaissance Foundation. And one of the preconditions for 8 universities who initiated this was the requirement to place on the site the information about the budget of the university, and none of the universities that were promoted, they didn't do this. And now I have a déjà vu that the most non-transparent sector is information about finances of the university. I have a question to the survey, whether the title is correct about the level of transparency of the university, because this is not the rating of transparency, but the ability to self-representation of their market promotion. And I'm glad that Kyiv-Mohyla Academy took the first place, but we expect the times when there will be transparency. Openness, right, maybe. Maybe there is a calc from transparency, that's why we call it like this. I remember the presentation of the first survey, and I'm pleased that the researchers took into account our recommendations, and of course, it's good that you do this. This is really hard work in analytical respect, because the databases you work with, all those sites, it's difficult to create a single algorithm for all of them, and I understand the number of gaps leaking the information, and it was difficult to interpret this information. But of course, this is not the rating of transparency, and the University of Gardening really sounds great. Maybe they should call it in another way, but we will have further discussions, and maybe we should discuss how to carry out the survey in a way it represents information correctly, and as the minister mentioned, the university should provide information on their site so they do not adhere to the law. So they should adhere to the law. This is first. And then there will be methodology how to compare, because there are things that cannot be compared among themselves. So there should be a clear indicators, clear criteria concerning transparency and assessment. Thank you. We like this rating. I would like to tell you several things. A lot can be said, but the most important. Sometimes when I speak with the administration of many universities, some things are shocking. I was shocked by the report of some rectors at the meeting with the minister. I don't remember their names. You can see this information on the sites. When someone criticized the center that carried out the survey, and they said that they do not do anything, they are useless, just spend money, give us money, and we will use it correctly. But I would like to say that that case, this is nonsense, and I would like to remind to you that there are two systems in the world of financing of something. That is plan system that doesn't need any results because people will get money, and grant system. There are a lot of many different grants, and they are provided to those organizations that carry out the duties, the purposes, and undertake the obligations and reach results they promised. So this is bright example that due to some grants the work was carried out, but it was done in a good way, and it was done in order to advance Ukrainian system of higher education to democratic methods of administering the universities. And I'm grateful to the center, analytical center, that they developed such a system. Of course, it has its flaws. There are many things to be we can criticize, but the model is good, and the results are reached, and they are understandable, and they are of importance. This is first. Also, I would like to say that unfortunately not all universities understand why it is important to introduce the system of transparency, the system of understandability. And unless the universities understand this, I doubt that they can be leading and effective. So some examples. Lilia Mikhailovna provided an example of some correlation between transparency, the index of transparency, and the places of state order, and the statistics confirm what I say. This is necessary to inform those who want to enter the universities, because if people get proper information about the university, they do not provide false commercials. University provides information, and they can provide information in order that people could make their choice where to go to study and to be informed properly. The university is financed by several sources, of course, state money, the budget, state budget. Also, contract students provide funds, but we underestimate the situation, because in Ukraine we have Catholic University and several other universities that understand the situation, but others, then they underestimate fundraising. And each fundraising company or donor will provide money to the universities, only to those universities that provide financial reports, and that should be understood. understood by everyone. And if they do not provide reports, they cannot get this from fundraising companies, from donors. That's why we pay a lot of attention to this issue in our academy. And in 2015, the results were published. We were not satisfied by with these results, and we developed a program why we want to be. Of course, this year we were estimated as the most transparent university, and we hope that in the future the situation will be like this. But we want to be transparent, and this is a rational choice, because this is good for students, for donors without whom the university can survive, and also administrative transparency is also important because people should know their rights. Students included, and also teachers and other stakeholders. So administrative transparency is very important for us. Also, about methodology, why this methodology? I would like to say about this. First, there is no correlation between transparency of the university and quality, I mean direct correlation, and quality of education that is provided. There is no such correlation. And even good, so the university can provide transparent information, but it doesn't mean that they provide high quality of education. But this methodology is used, and the index that is called Webometrics uses the same methodology. Of course, it is different there. They use not only information about the university that appear on the site, but also something connected with science. And of course, we can include some scientific achievements of the university in this rating. But this methodology, I repeat, of course, it has its faults, but it has many positive sides that overwhelm all faults, and the methodology can and have the right to continue. And as to other methodological things concerning calculation of scores, we believe that we are underestimated, though we have the highest scores. So we have internal site, and the information included there was not provided to the external site. We do not want that all the documents be presented in external site connected with financing, the students' curricula. There are some personal things, they exist, and a lot of scores that were not added, they are concerned with the matters that are in our external site. And also we have site of our library. There are all the works of all the teachers of our university, all the papers, all the theses defended in the academy, and this information was not included in the research. So we should pay attention not only to the formal pages that exist, but also to look at libraries and even internal sites. We worked for a year on the plan of strategic development of our university. It's about 200 students and teachers, professors, administrators work on this site, on this plan, and we discussed it for a long time, created working groups, and discussed it at the conferences, and we placed it not as the whole document, but we divided it in SWOT analysis, aim, goal. So we divided it in different direction in several subsites. So they gave us not 10, but 5 scores. But this is a comprehensive plan of strategic development, and it's not worse than in Western universities. What I wanted to say about schedule there is some level of privacy here. We should take into account private information, so we should adhere to legislation to protect personal information. Also, we won't stop on the scores that were given, and not because we want to be first in rating, but because we need it for our development. And now we work on, maybe other universities have it, Sumsky University has it, such site where we want to place all normative legislative documents of the university in order that people could search for information there in one place, and that would promote transparency of the university. I want to thank the Center, Yegor Stadnyi, for this wonderful work you performed, and please continue despite criticism. Thank you.
You raised hand earlier. First of all, thank you for the carried out work. As Madam Minister mentioned, that when the Agency of Educational Quality, when it will be launched, of course we will use this methodology. You can imagine how much work was carried out, while this is just only one indicator to measure the quality of education. So this shows how much, how big amount of work we should do. I believe that the ministry, the center should not be the body which will make the assessments itself, but it should develop policy how to assess and how to license independent assessment agencies. As of today, Ukraine is one of those not numerous countries which do not have the agency. I was much surprised to see the results. I found 2 universities from Uman and found out that Uman had become the educational center. I'm very much disappointed about the strategic planning among universities, and found out that not so many universities make this strategic planning and explain how they see the university in 5, 10, or 20 years. That's very good that now we have this rating, because it motivates universities to become better and better from year to year, to set objectives in competitiveness. I spoke to the students from the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. They know about the results of this rating, and they are very much proud. At the same time, they criticize they criticize when they are inside. When they speak with outsiders, they do not criticize. Well, no, I believe that I will do everything possible that for the National Agency on Educational Quality would use this positive experience. Also, it was pointed out that in this rating does not show the quality of education. but it shows the transparency of universities, but I believe that the university which is open, which does not hide anything, then it will be able to ensure quality of education. There are some universities which are so closed that they do not provide requested information even upon request. I think that it is very positive that we have such a survey in place, and I think it's very important that universities had realized that they have to change, they have to apply positive experience from Europe and ensure quality of education. So thank you for invitation to participate in this event, and we will make the maximum possible use of this methodology. As far as I understand, Madam Minister has to attend another event, very important discussion devoted to the state exams. Thank you for your participation, Madam Minister. I'm happy that there were so many positive positive references on the features of the survey, but I would like a bit criticize it. We still see the shortcomings in it and know the points for improvement, but sometimes we forget what is the eventual outcome, the eventual objective. The openness is just a way, not the final result. Openness is the inevitable precondition for that big culture which we call the university. Under the previous minister, under the current minister, implementation of the law on higher education actually means the reforming of universities. We should clearly understand what the university is. I would like to offer the three-level idea, which might be useful for the next year methodology of your survey. So the university comprises three pillars: the auditorium, the lab, and the decoration, so to say. Under the auditorium or audience, I mean that it requires the quality of education. The internal quality is something ideal, but the 25% of the optional disciplines should be very carefully assessed by the trainers and by teachers and students, and this should be done in public. We should be able to see what students say about this or that professor, teacher. So assessment of teachers by students is an element of transparency. Maybe the employers should assess the professors. So any sort of feedback is acceptable and should be reflected on website. As to the laboratory aspect, why we should not rank professors in line with the Gersh rating. And we will see that good professors sometimes have terrible quotation ratings, while the worst professors are good researchers, and they have very good quotation index. And now the decoration element. When we look at the Western websites, they quite often begin with a description of student life. That is, they say to students, we provide such opportunities in sports, in artistic studios, etc. So this is like a website is an element of engagement of new students, because the university would become the center of future students' lifetime for at least 4 years. It should be the place about which they should be proud and happy. And I am very much surprised that Ukrainian universities do not try to create this element of pride about their universities. By the way, the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy students are very much proud that they are students of the academy, and they sometimes irritates another students. In Oman, the students of pedagogical university are very happy and very proud that they are the students. Although this is a very specific university, I never heard the same about Poltava Pedagogical University. In Kamyanets-Podilsky, the students did not wish to say from which university they are, which is an indicator that they do not have this culture of the affiliation. They do not have this pride of belonging to the university. And openness is an important element of this culture. In the future, let us think not about just strategic plans, about openness, etc., but this rating should be an instrument for formation of the students' community, which is the key for improvement of educational system in Ukraine. Mr. Sharov, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank to those people who worked on this rating. Rankings are globally recognized instruments of improving education. In Ukraine, we do not have much of them, only the top 200 rating, and another one which compares the national educational institutions. I think that the transparency rating is now becoming the third national rating, and when it will be the third time surveyed in Ukraine, and when it will cover all types of property, it will become the national rating. So this allows me to state that under current conditions, due to these 2 or 3 ratings, we cannot assess our educational system in full scope. So I encourage Yegor to make this your rating the national one. Actually, this is the rating of readiness of national universities to the openness, while openness is the face of the educational institution. Then, to some extent, I disagree with my colleagues that this rating indicating the readiness of institutions allows the applicants to judge where to apply, to which university they apply, especially when they apply in computer form. The third, and now negative. Each rating, when during each future iteration, should take into account the shortcomings of the previous reiteration. About the components of this survey. As of now, they are collected a bit mechanically, depending on the scope of information. From the legal point of view, that's correct approach. But from educational institution point of view, it's just the beginning. And I should say that the top positions in rating are occupied with universities which work much on the issue. And I found out how many cultural educational institutions are in the lowest part of this ranking. I'm not speaking about relocated universities. I'm speaking about the cultural institutions. I think that that due to the creative or artistic exams, those universities are not very much interested to struggle for their students. And by itself, this rating is a useful instrument which might be well used by the ministry, by the agency of educational quality. I recollect discussions about so there is discussion about the name of the National Agency of Education. Now let's come back to our rating of transparency. Good, let it be rating of transparency. It has to cover the majority of high educational institutions, actually all of them. Then it has to be sustainable and gradually should comply with the Berlin standards despite the difficulty. Mr. Volodymyr Bugrov, I won't speak about negative aspects of the rating because it has received many positive references. The rating is an instrument which allows to make well-informed decisions. It also allows to develop draft decisions and vote for them based on good information. I would like to recollect here our experience of work with Shanghai rating. We have experience with the QS rating, which required 3 months collection on statistics. We have the the experience of work with higher education rating. This was in line with the older specialities list, and it required a lot of work from us. So the problem is that in Ukraine we lack educational statistics as such, and in result of this fact, all those ratings which we have to fill in, they are far away from our real situation. For example, about financial statistics, these are just scans of our financial documents. They provide very limited information to ordinary people. So we publish on our website the degree of implementation of our budgetary allocations on quarterly basis, but for plain people, it gives no information. Maybe the ministry or independent educational institutions should develop some information structure or some statistics item structure allowing to compare our universities with the Western ones. For several years we have been participating in UMalta-Ring, and when you visit UMalta-Ring site, you see how the management of the university is assessed. In general, these are 45 pages of comparative assessments, and when we analyze them, we can learn lessons and make conclusions for ourselves. Actually, this allows you to see what you do wrong. When we look at the top 10 mostly quoted articles of Ukrainian quoted articles in different sectors of research, and this could be a good indicator for the ministry to finance some most promising sectors in Ukraine. So we have to decide what parameters should contribute to the future development of science and education in Ukraine, because as of today the rating is a huge work done by the center, but only 50 universities are ready to develop policies for their development, and we have either to develop some criteria which would allow to compare universities, or After some years, CEDOS will got tired because of this project and will select another project. And while these ratings will remain something interesting. We have our internal website. On our website, we have all the scientific magazines on our website. Is it useful or not? We do not post our training curricula because quite often they are stolen by the authors from other universities. The state inspection of educational institutions should check compliance with the state standards of publications. And this could become a special subject for state inspections. And maybe for recommendations about allocation of budget money to the universities, about state order in the universities, etc. The most important thing is to fulfill the law. We have to fulfill the law, we have to publish information, we have to allow people to double check the information. During next 2 years, around 10,000 master programs have to be accredited in Ukraine. As far as I remember, the Accreditation Commission was able to review up to 400 master programs per month. So I cannot imagine how many Carpathian woods have to be cut to comply with this provision of the law. This suggests that information about that program should be put on the websites. Otherwise, the National Agency on Educational Quality will be unable to do its work. That's why I'm happy with this survey, because it is a step forward in the future agency's work. As representatives of the Alliance for Transparent Management in Education, I'm happy with this rating because it promotes transparency. Madam Minister mentioned transparency in financial reporting, which is a requirement in the law of higher education. As a graduate from the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, I'm happy with the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy results. But in terms of financial transparency, I'm not very happy with the results. And I would like to mention that we cooperate with the Ministry of Education, Microsoft Ukraine, and USAID developing electronic financial accounting program for educational institutions. We do not know as of the moment how the system will work, but we definitely know that we will select 5 universities for pilot projects. When we look at the top 20 universities in rating, we can see 2 universities which already approached to us. This shows that we coincide with CEDOS opinion. We will take universities with different forms of ownership. So this financial transparency issue, I hope, will be resolved in result of our project implementation. We have some time for one more discussion, but I would like to thank for your comments and to respond to some of them. The first is about name. Mr. Georgiy mentioned that I was not very much happy about the name, and I had doubts. I wanted to give another name. The openness was the best name. Transparency is a calque from English word transparency. As for financial indicators, from the year 2014, we changed the emphasis. 8 indices of 2014 were based on financial indicators. Now more than 45 indicators are based on the programs and the services provided by university, because we cannot duplicate the efforts of other agencies. The norm about financial reporting of universities of their websites is an obsolete request. There is data.gov.ua, the state register of financial operations, which requires to publish all the financial operations. Also, in 2014, I covered 7 sheets of paper with your recommendations. Now I have only 4. That's not enough. The first page of our rating is explaining what this rating covers and reflects, what it is not about. Of course, we tried to correlate our rating with the quality of applicants. It is 0.4. The financial documentation is 0.13. So we have to understand that there is a sort of relativity in information. But I agree that we do not reflect the quality. And we warn our readers about this. But in order to raise quality, in order to have more conscientious students, this is a good instrument. And many times we asked ourselves a question, whether competitiveness, a competition among universities, whether it forced them to close information, to hide some information. That's a good question, and I would like to mention that what Mykhailo said brought me to an idea. We have quite broad discussion what the quality of education is, and to answer what is the quality education. And we find ourselves unable to answer the question, because education should be seen in its interrelation with the institutions and institutes of society. When we look at the opinion of employers, the opinion of employers differs very much. They do not have a unified profile for assessment of graduates. Once we experienced an opinion of employer when rather well-trained and qualified financial analyst who graduated from master's program in our university was heavily criticized by employer for inability to make coffee and use fax machine. So we should assess the content of assessment, the formal indicators, and so all these elements of assessment, they are quite distorted in Ukraine. Under these conditions, we should collect responses from all stakeholders and then bring them to some unified result. For example, some years ago, we were requested to repair our stadium. And immediately we got criticism that we have repaired stadium instead of opening 4 additional labs. And we answered that 70% of students wished to have the stadium, while 30% of the rest of the students had a different opinion. This demonstrates that we should have generally acceptable indicators for administrators, for professors, for the faculty, for the parents, for students, etc. This is an example of how decisions are made by students, by their parents. Each university has its own landscape, so to say. So we have to develop some universal indicators allowing to compare universities. There are small universities, there are big universities. There art universities has just different function, not to engage applicants, but to choose the best out of huge number. That's why when we speak about competition, we should not turn it into comédie dell'arte. The competition should be among comparable universities. Because otherwise this would be a disinformation for those who wish to enter this or that university. When in this building we held education abroad, exhibition education abroad, the left wing is occupied by the perspective. This is actually a recruiting company which collects applicants for the neighboring university, for the neighboring country universities. We should prevent this.
So I didn't understand. Vice President of what? There is organization dealing with rating. Berlin Principle is. This is the organization that supervises the rating. They elaborated Berlin Principle. So, fund of prospects. This is Polish fund that is present in the education fairs. So there is internal theme of outflow of Ukrainian students Poland. One person is the vice president of the Association of Ratings, and at the same time he is the head of the Polish Foundation concerning recruiting. So the rating is used like this. So, Igor, I thought that whether do we need to promote and motivate universities to be more open? So in 1990s, they asked what should we do and how can we use it in startups. So, for example, I have a genius idea or ideal product, but I would never tell anything about it to anyone. So the idea so first you should produce something and then you can sell it. So if the university has high quality, provides high quality service, it should provide information of it throughout the world. And the openness of information is not the basis for high quality, but this is important precondition. So if you are not open, there is probability that you don't have quality. So this is an axiom. Now, I would like to tell you about the openness and why it is necessary. Recently, I won't name the universities, but there is such a case. During the last entering campaign, the student got results of independent assessment, 99 scores, one of the highest scores in Ukraine. So 199 and 200 and plus 200. So she could choose any program in Ukraine, and after the first day of study, they told her that this result, and she asked, why did I enter this? They told her during the first day of study that was declared and that was real are two different things. Now I have the question, what will this girl tell to others good things about this university, or whether she leaves? Or will people trust her? And I believe that the university, if it is not open, if they didn't provide full information to the student, they harm themselves in prospect. So openness is always yields good results. This is an axiom, and we should understand this. We should learn it from basic marketing things. So if you have something good, you should say about it loudly. Otherwise, we won't get good results as to quality. So, first, there is openness, but sometimes information that is on the site is easily accessible. Sometimes there are some references in the news, but if you do not know the reference, you cannot find information. Also, they mentioned the Berlin Principle. If you want to assess methodologically the rating, we should look how it correlates with the principles and integral indicators, whether they are valid. And we wanted to identify this through this rating. So if we want to have third or fourth national rating, we do not have many of them, but we can have a lot of them. We should look what is more important and to correlate the goal and to establish it clearly. That should be one of the national ratings. And about the sponsors, I would like to give an example. One of the potential sponsors recently at the conference said, if you want that your university got the grant of financing of some project, to show at the example of your university that you can carry out such tasks. You can give the information on the site, you can provide some software for project management, and to show that you can do it. And firstly, you can use site for this. Dear colleagues, so is this question so banal and I didn't succeed in my provocations? Vladimir touched upon this topic. Yes, there is such a phenomenon, copy-paste problem of these programs, and we should say that the form of these programs, this curricula, they are obsolete mainly, and I would like to tell you about the problem that is broader. We should create a platform for the higher education in Ukraine, and we have an issue of register that lasted for many years. U-Rank is a colossal platform of comparing universities through different criteria, and maybe it will be the instrument to choose the university by students and those who provide grants. We have a problem in Ukraine really big. We do not have the possibility to create such a platform, because we may say that the ministry side doesn't belong to the ministry, and there are problems connected with this, to reformat it, to introduce the register there. Oleg, I would like to say that I want to get more information whether there is a need that public sector help, because the things connected with such web platforms and their content, I believe there are many initiatives of e-governance. Maybe this is the case for being involved there, because these indicators are are of interest to students and specialists. Yegor, I'm for the register, and I'm against that these registers were supported or administered by the Ministry of Education of Ukraine, or a national agency, or any body that has governmental obligations, because in this case there will be influence on this register, some administrative pressure, and this register should be provided by NGOs and should be transparent. And if there are some questions that something is wrong or non-transparent, that shouldn't be a request to Ukrainian state, but to NGO, because this organization will try to do everything possible in order to reduce the number of complaints, because there shouldn't be complaints to the state. These are different functions. Let's understand it correctly. That's why I believe that it would be absolutely that in 2014 they adopted the law, and the ministry shouldn't deal with any ratings. The rating of the ministry is not natural. And honestly speaking, before this, there was rating in the ministry. They did it, and it was criticized, but this was official rating. And for me, it is a positive that it's non-existent now. It doesn't mean that they do not carry out some work in this area, but this is their internal activity, and it shouldn't be brought to the rating. Because the ministry doesn't have such function, and at the state institutions, the rating should be independent, and there should be many ratings that the governmental bodies should look them up and can take their decisions. Thank you. We maybe we can speak here about the data, the provision of such data, because from my own experience and the work of CEDOS, we have the examples of registers. When we get information on Ukrainian citizens who study abroad, part of countries are covered by the official requests and contacts, and part, for example, Italy. We can find information on the site, in the registry. There is information in what universities Ukrainian citizens study there, in what regions, what specialties, and the matter is we are lagging behind. In Moldova, there are such things, and we are lagging not only from EU countries, but also from the countries of the Eastern Partnership. That's why we need to deal with this, because I don't know how the national agency will deal with accreditation without such open registry. Of course, rating is a different thing, but there should be data available as to students, teachers. This is really important. I fully support this, and for the ministry, it's also of importance. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for being with us today, for taking part in this event. And Georgiy told us that we, of course, take into account the comments, and I'm not ready to tell about the next year, but we will continue our activity, and we always assess what we need to be assessed, what is of social interest. That's why we are always happy to get your comments. When they throw the cake, there were many people here, and when they are speaking about serious things, no one brought a cake.